My mother looked me up and down in the dress I'd saved 4 months to buy and said, loud enough for the next table to hear, "At least try not to embarrass us today." I smiled. I said nothing, because in exactly 43 minutes, a text message was going to land on my phone, and when it did, the woman who raised me to believe I was the family's biggest mistake was going to find out exactly who her mistake had become. She just didn't know it yet. There's a specific kind of silence in a family that stopped pretending. Not the silence of an argument, quieter than that. Colder. The silence of people who already decided who you are and stopped hiding it. That's the silence I walked into on my sister Naomi's wedding day. The wild mirror estate. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Orchids that cost more per stem than most people's weekly groceries. String lights strung across the ceiling like a net, built to catch the light and hold it the same way this family had always tried to hold a certain image of itself. Perfect. Except me. I sat at table 14, by the kitchen doors, the table that tells you exactly how much you matter, and felt my mother's eyes find me before she crossed the room. She didn't walk over to say hello. She walked over to inspect me. "That's what you wore?" Her eyes moved down my navy dress, pressed twice that morning to look like it cost more than it did. "I thought you'd at least make an effort for your sister." I didn't defend myself. I'd flown in on a red eye. I'd done the youngest bridesmaid's makeup when the hired artist canceled. I'd quietly covered the florist's final invoice when the family forgot the deposit. I said none of it. Because explaining yourself to someone who's already decided your guilt is like whispering to someone wearing headphones. The effort isn't for them. It's for you. "At least try not to embarrass us today," she said and walked away, heels clicking on marble, a woman who'd never once considered she might be wrong. I picked up my water glass. My hand was steady, because in my clutch, silenced but not off, was a phone. And in 43 minutes, it was going to change the temperature of this entire room. Let me back up. My disgrace wasn't a scandal. I never got arrested, never had an affair. My disgrace was smaller and crueler. I chose the wrong major. I turned down a marriage my father arranged to his business partner's son 3 weeks before the invitations went out. I left my father's firm, the job he handed me like a leash, to start something of my own. Something that lost money for 2 straight years. In this family, a woman who chose uncertainty over comfort wasn't brave. She was a disappointment. Naomi, golden, easy Naomi, never had to make that choice. Business degree, corporate job, a fiancé whose family owned 3 car dealerships. She smiled in every photo. She never said the wrong thing. I was the experiment that failed. And for 6 years, I let them believe it because proving them wrong wasn't worth the war, and because some pathetic part of me still wanted my mother to be proud. I didn't know that day would come at my sister's wedding, but here's what nobody at table 14 knew. 6 years ago, when I walked out of my father's firm, I didn't walk into nothing. I walked into a 2-room office above a dry cleaner's, with 1 laptop, $11,000, and a plan my mother called cute. "That's a nice hobby, sweetheart," she'd said. "What's the real plan?" The real plan was a boutique hospitality consulting firm, unglamorous work, fixing what's broken in struggling hotels and event venues before they go under. 3 years in, we were profitable. 4 years in, we had 2 hotel chains and a venue collective as clients. 5 years in, one struggling luxury property, 6 months from bankruptcy, asked if we'd be interested in more than consulting. They asked if we'd buy in. I said yes. Today, that property doesn't just belong to a family that once looked down on me. It belongs, in significant part, to me. 40%, held quietly through a holding company whose name told nobody anything, Marrow Hospitality Partners. That property is called the Wild Mirror Estate. The venue my sister was married in. The marble floor my mother's heels clicked across like she owned the ground beneath her. She didn't. I did. Nobody in my family knew. Not because I was hiding some grand reveal, but because I'd learned that the moment my family found out I was doing well, they didn't celebrate. They recalculated. Suddenly, there'd be a seat back at the table, but only because the table needed something from me. I wasn't interested in being needed. I was interested in being seen. There's a difference, when Naomi mentioned, months earlier, that she'd found the most incredible venue. Wildmere, absolutely magical. I just said, "That sounds beautiful." I didn't mention I'd approved the wedding calendar for that exact date 2 weeks before. I didn't mention my name was on the ownership documents nobody had thought to check. Why would they? In their mind, I wasn't someone who held things. I was someone who lost things. That was my role. I let them keep believing it, until the general manager of Wildmere, a sharp woman named Priya, who answered directly to me, sent a text that had nothing to do with my family and everything to do with what was about to happen in the middle of their perfect day. Have you ever sat in a room full of people who underestimated you and known something they didn't? It doesn't feel like triumph. Not yet. It feels like holding your breath. The ceremony was beautiful.
I'll give them that.
Naomi looked luminous. Grant cried, which surprised me. I'd never seen him show that much unguarded feeling. For a moment, watching them, something in my chest softened. Naomi wasn't cruel. She was just comfortable in a system that rewarded her for never questioning it, blind to what it did to me. Then the reception began, and comfort ended. My mother had built the seating chart herself. Table 14, by the kitchen doors, next to a cousin's +1 who spent 20 minutes on his fantasy football league. Not an accident. My mother didn't do accidents. Every choice was a message engineered to look like it wasn't one. You are tolerated by this family, not close to it. Then my father stood, champagne raised. Naomi has always been the daughter who made this family proud, he began, and the room laughed warmly. The way rooms laugh when they think they're hearing something charming instead of something surgical. She's never given her mother and me a sleepless night. She chose the right path. He kept going. Not every child makes the choices you'd want. Not every path is a straight line. A small, indulgent laugh from the crowd. But today isn't about that. Today is about the daughter who did everything right.
He didn't look at me.
He didn't have to. Every person at that head table understood exactly who the daughter who did everything right was being measured against. My mother caught my eye and I saw it, not quite triumph but close. A quiet satisfaction that the story she'd told about me for 6 years was, once again, being performed in front of witnesses. I checked my phone under the table. 43 minutes. The countdown I'd set 3 weeks earlier. A scheduled press release confirming Marrow Hospitality Partners' ownership stake in a major Wildmere renovation deal, timed for 6:15 p.m. I hadn't planned for that to land in the middle of my sister's reception. The universe had other ideas. At 6:14, my father was still talking, now about family legacy, about the values we raised our daughters with, when Priya's text finally landed. Contracts live. Press release just went out. Congratulations, partner. Also, heads up, the wedding coordinator just told me the family doesn't know you're an owner. Might get weird tonight. I felt my pulse tick up. Not fear. Something closer to clarity. 2 minutes later, the wedding coordinator, a young woman named Ellis who'd spent all week coordinating logistics with Wildmere ownership through emails I'd quietly signed, walked up to the head table holding a folded card and a phone. "Sorry to interrupt," she said to my father. "I just wanted to confirm final invoicing details with the owner before the night wraps." I was told she's seated at table 14. The room didn't go silent all at once. It went silent in stages, like a wave losing momentum, table by table, as heads turned toward table 14.
Toward me.
My mother's face did something I'd never seen it do before. It froze. "I'm sorry," my father said slowly. "The owner?" Ellis smiled, unaware she'd just detonated something. "Marrow Hospitality Partners. She holds 40%. We've been coordinating the whole event through her office." Silence. Real silence this time, the kind with weight. Naomi turned in her chair, wedding dress rustling, eyes wide.
"Wait.
You own this place?" I set my glass down, my hand, again steady.
"Part of it," I said.
"Since about a year ago." My mother found her voice first, and it came out sharp, defensive, the tone of someone realizing the ground had moved beneath her heels. "Why wouldn't you tell us that?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Would it have mattered?" I asked. "Would you have looked at me differently at any point in the last 6 years if you'd known I was doing well? Or would you have just decided I owed this family something because of it? Nobody answered, because we all knew the answer. Here's the twist. I want you to sit with this, because it's the part people get wrong when they imagine revenge. I hadn't orchestrated this. I hadn't planned to expose anything at my sister's wedding. The timing was an accident of business, not a scheme of humiliation. I could have easily asked Priya to push the release a week. I chose not to, and that choice is the part that matters. Because somewhere in the last 6 years, I stopped needing my family's permission to exist. I stopped organizing my life around the moment they'd finally see me. And the second I stopped needing that moment, it arrived anyway, not as a performance I staged, but as the simple, unavoidable consequence of having built something real while they weren't looking. That's the quiet, unglamorous truth about the best kind of revenge. It isn't loud. It isn't staged. It's just you, living your actual life, while the people who wrote you off keep operating on old information. My father cleared his throat, trying to recover the room. Well, this is wonderful news, actually. We're proud of you. And there it was. The recalculation. Right on schedule. You don't have to be proud of me tonight, I said, not unkindly. I didn't do this for tonight. My mother, still rattled, tried a different angle, softer, almost pleading. We had no idea. If we'd known, we would have. Would have what? I asked. Given me a better table? Nobody at that table had an answer. Naomi reached over and took my hand, the first real thing she'd done all wedding. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't know either. I should have asked more about your life. I never did. That out of everything was the moment that actually landed. Not the reveal. Not my parents scrambling. My sister, finally, seeing me. You don't owe me an apology for their choices, I told her. But thank you. I didn't storm out. I didn't make a scene. I finished my dinner. I danced once, badly, with my nephew at the kids' table, who thought it was hilarious that Aunt's a hotel person now. I watched my mother, for the rest of the night, work very hard to introduce me to people as my daughter, the entrepreneur, a title she'd never once used in 6 years, suddenly fluent in at the moment it became useful to say out loud. I let her, not because I forgave the 6 years, because I understood, finally, that her approval was never actually about me. It was about what I reflected back to her. And I wasn't in the business of being anyone's reflection anymore. 3 weeks later, my parents invited me to Sunday dinner for the first time in 2 years. I went. It was polite. Careful. Nobody mentioned Bradley Cohen or the firm, or the 6 years of quiet dismissal that came before the wedding. We talked about the business, mostly, my mother asking real questions for the first time, my father oddly quiet, watching me the way you watch someone you're recalculating. I don't know if that dinner was the start of something real. Maybe it was. Maybe it was just the family learning a new way to perform for me instead of about me. I'm still figuring out the difference. But I know this, I stopped waiting for their verdict. And the moment I stopped waiting, their verdict stopped being able to hurt me. Some people don't regret misjudging you. They regret it only when misjudging you finally costs them something. My family didn't lose a wedding venue that night. They lost the last chance to underestimate me for free.